Hey guys, welcome back to Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their most authentic selves. Today on the show, we have Ruchika Sikri, general partner at Wisdom Ventures and co-founder and CEO of Ready. Ready is not just an evolved dating app, it is also a home for relationships, for growth-minded individuals actively looking for a serious relationship and for those who are already in a serious relationship. Ruchika, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to dive into your world today.
Thank you, Sana, for having me on your podcast. It's a delight and an honor to be here today.
I'm excited to dive into your love story and how you and your husband have been able to grow and evolve together.
Yeah, happy to share, Sana. We met in 1998. I've been married close to 25 years. We're going to have our silver jubilee this year. It was a sweet encounter. We were introduced to each other through a friend who was working with me and had worked previously with him. He was living in United States and I was back in India, in New Delhi. Our first day when we were supposed to meet, I went to see him and he was supposed to go somewhere. And I think I probably was like late by a few minutes and he had to leave for his other meeting. So it was kind of a little strange thing. The guy didn't wait for me for another 10 minutes because I was stuck in traffic. However, I did connect with him the next day and, we figured out it was just the traffic and he had to be somewhere. And then we met for coffee and had lunch together. Those were just the only two meetings. And then we basically started dating online. Like 1998, dating online was basically AOL Instant Messenger. We didn't have any other fancy chats available or online dating tools available to do that. And it was fascinating to just like be on phone across, different continents and chatting, like when it was daytime for him, nighttime for me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And we did build a really sweet bond and understanding of each other. And the magical moment happened within about 9 to 10 months. He came back to India and he proposed me on my birthday. It was a sweet surprise visit. I was actually a little annoyed because he wasn't calling me on my birthday. And then, in the morning when I wake up, he just showed up with flowers at the door. So and then he proposed me. And since then, we've been together on this beautiful journey.
That's amazing. So you were navigating different time zones and different ways of life probably too, right? Like how was that challenge when you guys were dating? Like were there any big obstacles that you had to overcome during that phase with culture differences?
No, he's actually Indian as well. So we were
Mm-hmm.
pretty kind of tuned in into our cultural connection. The difference was like we were not able to meet in person. And, that was
Yeah.
something that I feel it reveals a lot about each other, just the somatic sense of being together in one place, being able to meet, hold hands, talk about things, look into each other's eyes. Like those were like moments that I feel were not available, honestly. But however, we made the best of the situation. I think we would talk on phone probably for an hour every day, if not more, and constantly be sharing about each other, our likings, our dislikings, what's truly meaningful for us in our lives via AOL Instant Messenger. So we got to know a ton about each other, but I think having the proximity of physical closeness also makes a big difference. But I know now, I think, people can probably relate to this even more now. I know, especially like many of us live like a digital nomad and people are working from different geographies and still continuing to
Yeah.
maintain a long distance relationship. So it's probably more common now as compared to what it was in 1998. But yeah, so that's what I would kind of say. No major obstacles, but just like having that ability to meet on a whim, let's have dinner together or go for a
Mm-hmm.
walk was not available to us at that
I
time.
have a theory that when you're long distance, you have the opportunity to connect deeper in an emotional way. I think the relationship goes further faster because you are able to tap into the heart and the soul on such a deeper level than like when you're physically together. So I think I have a theory of like that's why Love is Blind was created, was to give people that opportunity to connect on a soul level before you see each other physically, before you connect physically. And I think it's like really beautiful that you guys were able to do that. And that's probably why it like you felt so close and so intimate without the physical closeness.
Yeah, I think there is something to that for sure. Just that attraction that gets created by the unseen, and the untouchable. Like that's like something that we was profoundly helpful. Intellectually connecting with someone, emotionally connecting with
Yeah.
someone, really discussing things, that mattered to us, like that brought us to where we were at that time in life, and then also kind of really cultivating this understanding of like what do we want our life to be together? How do we want to, you know, make the best of being in this relationship together and things like that.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So, how did you start to get into Ready platform? And like, how did the idea come about? And how did your relationship with young Pueblo Diego start?
Yeah, it's actually so new. I was not expecting that I will be, co-founding Ready with Diego, but he and I started talking about it, I would say last year, sometime in July or August timeframe. And then, just the idea just really spiraled very quickly into formation of a formal idea, concept, and definition of the product we want to create. And essentially, my interest in this space comes from now, as I mentioned, we've been married for more than 2 decades. And I realized the importance of relationship is not like when two people just meet, but how do they cultivate the relationship matters so much. That's where mainly, Diego and I were like mind melding. He mainly writes a ton about personal growth, personal transformation, and relationships, as we can see on his Instagram post and the 4 books that he has written.
Yes.
And my realization of like, wow, there are so many milestones that come along. We have 2 children now, my husband and I, and each of the phase with having a child, and them growing into a toddler to a young kid to an adolescent, all the way to becoming an adult. It presents new opportunities to couples to reinvent and invigorate your own relationship. And the absence of it or the presence of it kind of really makes it or breaks the deal. Part of it is that, some very conscientious work can be put into it. And part of it is that deep understanding and adaptability and agility of how to kind of run with that expanded sense of being as a family, also as a growing human yourself. It really kind of comes together. And partly, like, my inspiration for Ready came also from, I realized that there are so many families that unfortunately do not have the support of being supported through their relationship journey, like the couples. And what ends up happening is that, a lot of dysfunction occurs in those families because couples are not able to sort things out, discuss things, come to the same plane, and then the children get impacted. And then those children become adults, and then they carry on dysfunctional life and family. My background, my parents did a lot for me and my brother as we were growing up, but they had a lot of like differences that they could not calibrate on. And I kind of felt like that I had the short end of the stick, mainly because sometimes I had to figure things out and navigate the emotional challenges that came along with that. So, I truly feel like if couples have an opportunity to cultivate and grow their relationship properly, intentionally, consciously, it affects intergenerational trauma, challenges, or development, So I kind of, come from that experience and Diego's work on the relationship currently with people looking for a soulmate. It was just a really nice combination for us to come together and think about how do we create a dating platform and a relationship platform where people have a moment to reflect and
I
be,
love that.
rather than jump into like, okay, what are the 100 people's photos on the platform today that I can swipe left or right? How do we bring more intentionality into it as the first step of finding who you want to make your life partner?
That's so beautiful. And it's so important So that's how I found you. So I do a lot of relationship coaching in my space, and I've noticed that there's a difference between people who grew up in healthy homes and the way that they show up in relationships is very different than the people who, like you said, come from a dysfunctional background, or maybe just some parents that may not have been as emotionally mature, and they really do struggle with connecting in relationships, even though they're trying their best, they're in therapy, they're doing quote unquote the work. But what I think that the connection between how we are raised in our childhood and the way our relationships are with our caretakers have such a monumental presence in our relationships when we're adults, and even when we're cultivating relationships outside that aren't as intimate, like our friendships and our co-working relationships. So I think what you're building at Ready is really, really interesting, that it's not just a dating platform. The way I see what really resonated with me was I've been wanting to see a place where people can learn about relationships, learn like what goes into breaking the cycles of those behaviors that we have that are repeating in relationships, and really have an opportunity to remember that what we experience in our adult relationships truly do mirror how our relationships were with our caretakers. So it's just fascinating what you're building. It's revolutionary. I think it's so, so important because even for someone like me who was in therapy for so long, I wasn't able to hit that realization and that breakthrough until I went deeper into that somatic world of like really feeling and embodying the change and the feelings that are coming up for me, and allowing myself to process it. Like you said, like gain that emotional intelligence in a way that is not really taught in Western culture.
And I can see and feel it, coming through you, Sana, like, just the genuineness of like why it's so important to you, it coming from the place of doing the work on yourself. And I think this type of work needs to be continued through lifetimes. It's like, it's not something that you go to one therapy session or sit in one long meditation and it can get sorted. I look at like when relationship is formed, two individuals meet and they get attracted to each other. However, they have this huge backdrop. Each of them have this huge backdrop of whatever transpired in their life till that time that has made them to be the human being they are, with all the feelings, all the thoughts and personality that they have built, the beliefs that they have been instilled with. And when they meet, it's kind of like this space of recreation of
Mm.
both of them and a co-creation of what comes through them into the world. And I think that needs attention, that needs care, that needs a, conscious awareness of like something new is getting built over here. Also knowing that there's all of that backdrop of information, the stories and, narratives that we bring into our lives, the judgments. That's why I feel the beginning of the relationship is beginning of the work. Not to kind of make it like huge baggage that we have to carry, but the potential for personal growth that comes with it. Being in a relationship, like when you have your first child, like discovering if you haven't talked very well through it, and you can just talk so much, right? You can talk so much about what kind of parent you want to be, but when you show up to be a parent of one style versus the other, then you're like, now what? Like, I'm a attachment based parent and you're a very discipline based parent. So how do
Exactly.
we, like, how do we make the best of those complementing values that can support my child to be a loving and a disciplined, respectful entity and a citizen of this world, rather than being at conflict of like, no, we should just do attachment versus only discipline. They don't need to exist like independently, but how do they kind of really come together? And I'm speaking like, from my personal experience, like this is what I like personally went through,
Yeah.
after having my own two children and determining like, wow, like we need to re-contract on how we parent together and how
Wow.
much do we
Yeah.
talk about and how much do we live and learn and apply in the real life setting.
I think the most beautiful thing that you just said is like, it's not about doing it one way or the other way. It's about understanding your individual way and then merging that, the co-creation of the best parts of your style, the best parts of his style of parenting, and figuring out a new pathway to co-create a way that works for both of your authentic selves without you sacrificing, without him sacrificing. And that's like so beautiful and hard to do when you come from a fixed mindset and you're not willing to see things from a different point of view, and you think your way is the best way and the only way.
We get attached to our notions, don't we? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, my way is the best way, or it's the highway.
Yeah. Did you guys struggle with that at all, or were you always like have an understanding that we are both going to bring what we want to the table and then decide the best path forward?
Yeah, initially it was a bit of a struggle because some of the things we definitely talked about, that we want to have children together, nurture them and make them into good human beings and enjoy being parents. But these nuances of things, like, really also, like, it depends again on what type of family and environment do you grow in. Was this kind of a conscious part of the conversation when you were growing up, or
Right.
was it something that you had to discover yourself? And I feel like in our case, we had to discover it ourselves. That, my upbringing was done in a very casual environment where my mom was the home caretaker. She basically provided food, did our laundry, nourished us, and provided, like, our lunches, breakfast, dinners. Everything was pretty set. But I was brought up by my aunt, who wasn't married at that time, and my grandmother.
Interesting.
So a lot of my values and nurturing happened through my grandmother and my aunt. And then we also, like, kind of lived in this communal home where there were, like, a lot of families that lived around us. So I would just consider them as my extended families. Like, if my mom wasn't available for something, or some topics I could not approach with her, I could go and talk to an aunt or a elderly sister figure in my life, and sort those things out with them. And then I felt like the whole world is, like, kind of my family, right? Like, and I can just lean on anybody. My
Yeah.
aunts, my uncles, my masis and boas, everybody, who we call, our relationships in India. And my husband had a bit of a different upbringing. He was, like, part of a family with three boys, and parents were very leaned in. Everything was kind of defined in that environment. And, it was just a reflection when I had my first child that, wow, like, my world is this way, and that's what I'm bringing up this sweet little girl that we have. And he had those different notions. So overall, over time, like, we had to kind of reconcile and understand the value of both sides, right? Like, having a controlled, not controlled, I would say it's a pretty heavy word, but a curated environment where
Mm.
children wake up on time and they have some discipline to eat breakfast and go to bed on time, versus also the flexibility, like, when we have friends and family at home, to not be so, like, attached to, like, bedtimes and things like that, and
Yeah.
let them kind of just have fun. And I think that's true for most couples, I would say, if I'm not over exaggerating. Some are very disciplined and have great understanding of how to bring up their children in a very unified way. But a lot of couples end up just discovering likings for food, the types of clothes you want to wear, where you want to go for a vacation, how do you want to bring up your children, how do you want your extended families to be part of your day to day. All of those are things that there only one way to discover is to start kind of living it together.
Hmm. Yeah, and being willing to see it as it comes up and be like open to exploring what it looks like, instead of like, because I know people with anxiety, it's really hard for them, and I was like this too. So, personal experience of just like not knowing exactly how we're gonna do things before we do it, and being okay with going with the flow as it happens. It's like the biggest challenge. So I'm like terrified to have kids because I know I'm gonna have to completely surrender to the unknown.
Yeah, they are our biggest teachers. Like, I truly
Yeah.
feel, they bring something new to our lives. Sometimes, often parents feel like we're teaching our children, and we need to, like, the ways of life, how to be safe, how to communicate, all of those
Right.
things. I think we have a very important role. And when I talk about children as our teachers, and people often misinterpret, I truly mean like they press our buttons like nobody does.
Yes.
And and by that I also mean like they actually help us discover the unknowns that we had not discovered until then. As I have kind of grown as a parent and in my relationship, I've realized like those are just such sweet opportunities for me to exercise my growth mindset again, to say like, what is it that I'm not understanding of a teenager growing up in America that I did not have to do when I was a teenager growing up in India. So that
Yeah.
curiosity can really create a lot of space for growth and true connection in the relationship with your partner as well as with your children. And that builds the trust and safety. That vulnerability of not knowing everything can build a lot of trust and safety. And I think that's the real key. I would also say, like, our ego gets the best of us. So sometimes, like, being open to saying, like, I don't know. I really don't know how to sort out through this phase, and then leaving it. I mean, if I leave a lot to the universe, like, show me the way, show me the
Yes.
path. What can I do right now to be and allow for this moment to be an opportunity for growth for me and my family and my relationship?
That's so beautiful because a lot of parents don't have that mindset. I think, especially with immigrant parents in America today, they feel like like you were saying, the safety and the security. They think that they have to protect their kids to a point where, like, they don't trust that their kids can figure it out themselves and what's best for them. And I know that's the biggest struggle that I had with my parents, where I was like, you guys have had to be in survival mode in this country, and you've had to really try to do things by the book and fit in and not ruffle too many feathers. Like, that's the experience you had. And I'm so eternally grateful that you have been able to build this foundation for us. But now it's time for us to go outside the box a little bit and challenge the status quo, challenge the norm. And I wouldn't be in the place I am today to be able to even do this if they didn't take the risks that they did. But I also want them to understand that, like, it's okay to trust that you raised intelligent, strong, independent children who can become adults that are here to take the baton and move it to that next level. So your mindset is so refreshing to hear.
And I had to learn it the hard way, Sana. It doesn't come naturally. I think, as we become a parent, like the first thing that is kind of always at guard for us is like, how do we protect our children, like from physical harm, from mental,
Mhm.
emotional harm. If you're really conscientiously kind of vested in their best interest. But you're right, like at some point they become independent. They have learned ways of life that I have not, because I am not growing up as a 10-year-old in this
Right.
country, or a 16-year-old, rebellious teenager entering the adolescent. And also, just a lot of empathy and compassion, I would say, of growing up as maybe a first generation or second generation immigrants into the country and trying to fit in. I see like the challenges the children may face are quite unique, I would say.
Yeah.
And they enable their growth and development, but you need to allow for that to happen, because I have no words of advice I can give to a child. I can be there to support them, protect them, care for them, listen to them, validate that they're feeling excitement or sadness the way they are feeling it, and just, get on that roller coaster with them. However, how am I equipped to advise them on how to grow up as an Indian child or an immigrant child in an environment where I did not have an opportunity to grow up? So that is just very humbling, for me to kind of identify. And then my daughter is now in college. She's second year
Wow.
college. And I truly tell her, like, you need to tell me, like, what are the ways of life for a 20-year-old, like, in this country, who has grown up here compared to someone who immigrated around that
Yeah.
age from a very different country. So, yeah, you're right.
I think it's the biggest blessing that a parent can offer a child is being humble enough to know that the challenges are different, the lifestyle is different, the obstacles are different, and being there, having someone who validates your feelings is the most loving thing in the world. It's just, I'm here to hold you and support you while we figure it out together. Like, that's the key to good parenting, good partnership, good coaching, client relationships, like all of the above, where it's like none of us have the answers. If we did, like, life would be so much easier. But I don't think that's the point. I don't think we're here to live an easy life. I think we're all here to figure out our paths in these ebbs and flows of ways and forever be on the journey of learning and growing as a collective. And like the fact that it's like you're not sitting here on like your throne saying, I'm the mother, you have to listen to me. You're like the guide with them through the fire, through the obstacles, and saying, let's figure it out together. Like, that's so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I think that has been a biggest gift. And at the same time, I would say there has been times where, like if I would say, there are moments in life where the child's brain hasn't developed fully to make
Right.
certain decisions that can go really wrong for them. And, I think there are some extreme things that we as human beings at every stage of life are enticed into trying, which our elders know that they're not good for us, right? Like I would say, drug and substance and alcohol abuse, is one
Right.
of those things. And I feel those are the good fights that parents can put their foot down to fight and support them if the children are like kind of in the middle of it to bring them out. I hope, with the sense of community that's available to you, but also it's not okay to like try some of those things. Unfortunately there is, and those are life threatening challenges that cannot be gamified and you cannot compromise on it. So I also want to kind of just manage that, there is moments of frustration, anguish that happens on a day-to-day life, and then there are some decisions that children can make that can impact their whole life in a very tragic way. And that's when like parents really fighting the fight and putting their foot down is a good fight. I would recommend as a parent now that we
Yeah.
need to put up.
I 100% agree. There's definitely times where you have to step in. The way I see it is like if a child is going down that path, usually there's like an underlying cause,
Mhm.
and there's either a mental health struggle that they may be dealing with that they may not have the language for, or feelings of insecurity trying to fit in with the cool kids, or whatever the case may be. And I think it's important for parents to not just say, don't do that, but actually say, why is
Right.
this something that you are looking to do? And being more curious into the child's world, I think can really help them connect.
Yeah, you're so right. I think, that's a very important distinction to make on how to approach. So we're clear on like what we need to do is the interventions are needed, but how we make those interventions happen can completely define if there is a path to recovery or not. Because, one thing I learned is like, after the child turns 18 in this country, like you can't even track their medical records. You need their explicit
Permission.
permission to do that. And it was actually a very bizarre thing for even my daughter and I to kind of go through. And she's like, why do I need to sign all these paperwork, mom? And I'm like, I have no idea, but clearly you have more agency on your life, which comes with a lot of responsibility. So that was a great ground for another conversation. But you're right. I think it's that deep, soulful connection. I mean, I know we're kind of going into the path of parenting right now because I've been on that path, my husband and I, for 25 years. And it's such an integral part of our relationship
Yeah.
that we see, sometimes our happiness is and satisfaction comes from like, how are our children feeling today? Like, it can almost become so overlapping that we lose sight of like, what is our happiness? Like, are we happy as a couple? Or is it
Yes.
always about like, our children's happiness? If they are satisfied, then we are too. there's some sense of like satisfaction, I would say, of like knowing that, we're so comfortable with each other that now,
Right.
we can prioritize like, this upcoming wave of our children's independent lives be more important or equally important to us, though.
How do you navigate the empty nest syndrome? I feel like there's a lot of couples that lose how to connect together once the kids are grown and moved out of the house and they're like, how would you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, well, in our case, we're not empty nesters yet. We have our
Yet.
younger son, who
Yes.
is kind of keeping us on our toes, and but I think there are things that couples can do, like just have the time set aside, like to just be your own two humans who basically created this whole world around you, the home,
Yeah.
the children. It kind of really emerged from the two of you. So just kind of making time for that. Sharing some interests and hobbies could be some things
Yeah.
that we could do as well. Right. And then also I would say at some point, like, one of the partner may actually like be very busy with their work and things like that, then I think the
Mhm.
opportunity really opens up for understanding adaptability, but also to kind of that consensus understanding of like, wow, life is really busy right now. Like, let's just go for a walk. I think half an hour of walk we can afford to
Mm.
ourselves. So go get a cup of coffee, or go
Yeah.
get a meal together. So those are the things that I feel are the small things that can be done to continue refueling and reconnecting the essence of the two people building the whole world around them.
I think it's the Gottman method, if I'm not mistaken, where they call it deposits of love, like into the love account. So
Mhm.
these little moments, they may seem so small, like a walk after dinner or a meal out, but they're deposits that you're putting into this bank account of love so that during the moments where you're feeling a bit more disconnected, you can have that bank account to tap into and remember the things that made you feel closer and do those things again, especially during the times when everything seems chaotic and everything seems disconnected. It's really important to remember the little pockets because those are the moments that keep love alive long term. I think it's not the big things, it's not the vacations, it's not the grand gestures, especially over a relationship over time. I mean, I've only been married, 9 years. I can't say 25, but for us, that's what's keeps us the most connected, I think.
Yeah, so beautifully said. I might actually, yeah, I'm reminded of that from Gottman's, and that could be such a good feature, like in Ready, as you know, that we're building Ready for as a home for relationships. So,
Yes.
of course, there's a place for couples to meet, but, when they have met, supporting and nurturing their relationship so that they are going into those authentic depths of their own being and connecting at those various levels is important. And then also, couples who have been married or are living together for many years can also find support on Ready. And I think, having that little feature of like, how are we making those like little penny or 10 cents
Yeah.
deposits into our bank every day, and like doing that check in and seeing your bank, kind of like
I
collectively
love
growing.
that.
It could be a good feature. You just gave me an idea on that.
I actually love that. And then it could even like, especially if you have an app, it's
Yeah.
like, you do the thing and then and you remember and it's like right there whenever you're feeling disconnected. It's like, oh yeah, look, our bank account is actually at 80% or we have this much in our account. Like we're not disconnected. We just have to remember what we did to get there.
It's such a fantastic idea. See how we're kind of we often say we want to co-create Ready, like with people around, because I think there's an awakening that has happened after COVID where people are just like very deeply interested in looking inward, living authentic life, having serious relationships. And I think it's such an opportune moment to provide them a platform where they're able to do that, if they're so interested, definitely, so that's our dream and hope, honestly, with Ready, that we can enable those two people who are doing the inner work to meet on the platform, continue doing the work together, get to know each other through that reflection based understanding and connection, And also like for couples to come onto the platform and have ability to learn, grow, ask each other some questions, create a bank account, where they're kind of contributing to their relationship every day. That's what our hope and mission really is, like with Ready.
That is so beautiful. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait until it's out in the world. I have big like hopes and dreams for it. I'm telling you, like I had a vision of creating some way of like helping people connect deeper. I just couldn't figure out what it was. And when I saw Ready, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I can't wait until like I learn more about it. And I feel a sense of peace and ease knowing that this is where we're heading towards as a collective in relationships, because I do agree that there was something that you said actually on the website and it really resonated, where relationships are the foundation of the world that we see around us. They're a crucial factor in our overall well-being, and they have such a ripple effect on all of those around us. And I agree, like when you're happy at home, you show up better and happier as a leader, as a worker, as an employee, as a citizen, like you said, of this world, where you are smiling more. You're not on edge all the time, where you're like, somebody cuts you off on the highway, you're not immediately getting angry. You have a lot more peace. You have a lot more compassion for others as you build that love at home.
100%. Yeah, thank you for picking up on that. And I think that's my why of doing Ready so strongly, because whatever happens at home, like, is like something that we bring into every aspect of life. And also having worked in corporate companies like for 25 plus years, whatever happens at work, like we bring it into our homes as well, right? So
Yes,
it's like a
so
very
true.
mishmash of the life that we live, and it's really important. And I would also like to kind of take us like one step further back and say, whatever happens in here, Sana, is what we bring to a relationship as well.
Yes.
So nurturing that is like such a key element of Ready, where we want to help people discover, raise their own self-awareness, increase their own knob on self-compassion. If
Yeah.
we keep beating ourselves with our own stick, guess what, that's how we're going to treat people who we are in relationship. If we are
Yeah.
our worst critic, that's what we're doing to people unknowingly
A
around us.
100%.
And I this inspiration truly comes to me from Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who's been a river teacher. I've read a lot of his work, and he used to come to Google quite often to pay us a
Oh,
visit.
wow.
And he said in one of his teachings was like, when people are causing you suffering, it's not because they mean bad or they want to cause you suffering. It's only because their own inner suffering is so much that now it's spilling over and causing suffering to others all around them. And that's what I truly mean by ripple impact of
Yes.
relationships. First, we need to nurture the relationship with ourselves. And
Hmm.
then, it shows up with our partner, with our children, with our extended family, friends, places we go to work with, people we have interaction with. It shows that energy, just shows very clearly, and we're very fine tuned
Yeah.
into it.
A
Yeah.
100%. And I couldn't agree more, because on my own journey, I've noticed that whenever I am like upset with my partner about something, almost always it's an invitation for me to look at where am I not nurturing my own self better, and then expecting him to fill that void within me, and not thinking that he's doing enough or not loving me enough or not, and then when I look in and it's like, wait a minute, when's the last time I had a self-care day? When's the last time I took care of myself? And realizing that it's my inner child asking me, but I'm projecting that out onto my husband.
Yeah. I'd say like self care is not a luxury, it's a
No.
necessity. It's a
Yes.
necessity.
I say
Put
that
your
all the
oxygen
time.
in the airplanes. They say put your own oxygen mask first before you help others. Like,
Yes.
we hear it all the time. However, practicing that is a completely different story. So big kudos
Hopefully,
to you.
Ready will be the perfect place.
Yes, we're
Maybe
hoping.
there's a bank account for love, and then there's also individual bank accounts where people are responsible for their own filling up their own cup and then seeing, I don't know. Well, I'm
Oh,
excited
we
to
are
see.
building a feature on that. Wait till you see it. Like we'll
Oh,
be
I'm so
launching the
excited.
prototype soon. So there is a feature that tells you about your own inner radiance each day you
Oh,
work
I
on
love.
Betty. Yeah, so definitely we start with that.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Ruchika, thank you so much for being here. This conversation has been so, so lovely. If my audience wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
I think LinkedIn is the best way to connect right now. I get too many emails and I feel I'm disappointing people all the time by not responding. I do check LinkedIn messages quite frequently. So if they want to
Perfect.
connect and share, I'm available there.
Amazing. And when can we expect ready to be ready?
Oh, we're working, we're putting our heart and soul into it. We're in some very initial testing phases of this. And hopefully by summer, by
Okay.
midsummer, we would have some taste of Ready out in hands of people.
I can't wait. Thanks again so much for being here.
Of course.